Hello, I'm Sudarshan, a Starshine Star. Welcome. It is a beautiful, very, very early Sunday morning. It is March 8th, 2026. I have a YouTube channel called It's the Dazzling of the Light, or you can just go to YouTube and type in at Sudarshan, a Starshine Star to access my well over 300 podcasts and climbing. They're nothing dull and boring. I don't do the mundane like talk about my snacks or something like that. I really don't do that. If you like this content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and let me know what you think. Drop a comment, emoji. Why not join my YouTube channel? It's pretty fun and get notified. I like to begin all of my clips with the three opening prayers, which are in Sanskrit and Telugu, and they are short. It's the Guru Mantra, the Ganesha Mantra, and the Gayatri Mantra. Before I do that, I command on the sacred blood of Jesus the Christ, Yeshua, to flow over all of us, bless all of us, and all of our human beloveds and all of our animal beloveds, and all of creation. Please, Yeshua, cast out all satanics and all satanic attachments. Cast out all demonics and all demonic attachments. Cast out the spirit of pain. Cast out the spirit of fear. Cast out the spirit of lack, poverty, neediness, feelings of never having enough. Cast out mental illness, fogginess, confusion, negative illusions and delusions, lack of clarity. Cast out self-rejection, self-dislike, self-hatred, or the projection of that onto anyone or anything else, as well as the reception of that from anyone or anything else. Yeshua, please send your healing presence now. Thank you. Please heal the wounds in our souls. Thank you, Yeshua. We receive your healing presence, your blessings, and your divine protection. Amen. Svaha. I also command on the sacred, beautiful, divine mother aspect called Mother Mary, and all of her gloriousness, all of her unconditional love, all of her welcoming mother's arms to embrace and soothe us, to comfort us, uplift us, reinstall confidence, self-esteem, self-love, self-worth, a sense of belonging, a feeling of peace and contentment, open-heartedness, open-mindedness, as well as her fiercely loving mother's heart, which loves us unconditionally, but also installs and teaches the good boundaries. We must have discipline. We must have boundaries. That's what any good mother would do for her children. And we receive all of this from Mother Mary and from Yeshua. Thank you so much. Amen. Svaha. Now to the prayers. Om, Om, Om. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshvara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahmam, Tasmahi Sri Guruve Namaha. Om Suklam Bharataram Vishnum Seshivarnam Chatupujam Prasanavaranam Dhyaye Sarva Vignyupashante. Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhako Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Wonderful. Listeners, I do those prayers to bless, uplift, purify, and protect you, me, and this clip. So let's go. I've really got such a good one on this early morning. So fantastic. I'm going to call it, it's going to be a funny title of this podcast. I'm going to call it Proxy Iran, ? Nope, ! Alliances, I2U2 / Quad, ! Yeah, it's gonna be juicy. So this is a really, I'm gonna read this so great from Dr. Steve Turley. And he's also writing a book. I think he's written some other books. I haven't read them, but he's writing a book that sounds very interesting. And I will let you know the title of that, even though he hasn't published it yet, but just to jot it down for future notes if you like. So here we go. Over the last 12 hours, there are clear signs that the Iranian regime is reaching its cataclysmic end. Their supreme leader is dead. 49 senior regime figures obliterated. Iran's navy sits at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Every operational warship sunk. Over 2,000 military targets have been struck in less than a week. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard, headquartered in Tehran, has been reduced to rubble, and the Natanz nuclear facility is burning as we speak. The mullahs are, in the words of the House Intelligence Chairman, circling the drain. And as the regime scrambles to desperately hold on, something remarkable is happening here at home. Trump's poll numbers are surging. A supermajority of Americans are rallying behind this mission. And I'm going to show you exactly what President Trump is doing here, what this Iranian war is really all about, and how the MAGA movement is turning out to be more extraordinary than anything we could ever have imagined. Greetings, everyone. 7 days in the Iranian regime. No, excuse me, listeners. I got this yesterday. So he said 7 days in. Now it's really 8 days in. 7 days, 8 days in, the Iranian regime is bleeding from every artery. The supreme leader is dead. At least 48 senior officials and commanders have been unalived alongside him. And the IRGC, one of the most feared military forces in the Middle East, has lost over 60% of its ballistic missile launchers, its entire operational navy of 30-plus warships, and uncontested control of its own airspace over Tehran. Over 1,700 military targets were destroyed in just the very first 72 hours of Operation Epic Fury. And the place has only intensified since, with Israel announcing a new phase of broad-scale strikes on regime infrastructure deep inside the capital, while simultaneously hammering Hezbollah in Lebanon to the north. Iran is lashing out in literally every direction. They're firing ballistic missiles at Qatar, at Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. They're attacking U.S. bases. They're attacking cities. They're attacking anything they possibly can. But every retaliatory salvo only exposes how degraded its capabilities have become, with Gulf allies intercepting nearly everything Tehran throws at them. Take a look at this chart. And then, listener, you can go to RAND, R-A-N-D, group at Crypto and, that's CRYPTOAND on X, if you want to see this chart. But I'm going to describe it to you. It's titled, The Iran Missile Chart is the Most Important Geopolitical Visual of 2026. And, no, excuse me, that's not what it's labeled. The chart is labeled Iran Ballistic Missile Launch Trajectory. And this is, like I said, the Iran missile chart is the most important geopolitical visual of 2026, not because of the 350 on day 1, because of the 0 on day 10, or as it would be today, day 11. And the chart shows like huge high columns at first, and then it's dropping to just a flat pancake, listener, at 0. And Dr. Steve says, it's this is data coming from CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command. This is astonishing. This is the rate of their ballistic missile launch depletion. So here's a breakdown of their rapidly diminishing retaliatory capacity. They've gone from 350 retaliatory missile strikes on day 1 to now just 15 as of day 8, or listener, day 9. 350 to 15. So at this rate, if that rate, the speed of decline continues, they will be at 0 in a matter of 2 days. Same with their drone strikes. They've gone from a high of 541 on day 2 of the operation. Now it's just 12. So altogether, Iran ballistic missile attacks have decreased over the course of 1 week. The first week by 90%. While Iran drone attacks have decreased by 83%. So that's the big picture, the aerial trajectory, as it were, of this war. Iran's military capabilities are being annihilated in a span of 8-9 days. And what's unfolding before our eyes is really a complete paradigm shift in the significance of what's called the technopolarity for how first world countries like the United States and Israel are waging war. Technopolarity, right? You've often heard of multipolarity, but there is also something called technopolarity. And that involves the notion that civilizational power is increasingly defined not by landmass or the size of your army or how deep you can dig your bunkers, but by your mastery of the technological stratum, the invisible layer of stealth, precision, cyber, orbital, AI-enabled systems that sits above, literally, in the cloud, the traditional battlefield. And whoever controls that cloud stratum controls the world. Matt Forney actually had a great write-up on this on X. 20 years ago, this war that we're seeing would have been impossible. Absolutely impossible, at least without a ground invasion and tens of thousands of troops. Today, AI-driven targeting, autonomous drone, astonishingly, drone swarms, next generation satellite surveillance, they've all fundamentally changed the equation. First world militaries can now micro-target enemy leaders, missile launchers, and ammunition caches with pinpoint precision that minimizes civilian casualties and keeps their own forces out of harm's way. This is the technopolar paradigm shift in action. And it's exactly what we're watching unfold. The Air Force, Navy, the IDF. They spent a week systematically destroying Iran's military leadership and infrastructure while explicitly avoiding civilian targets. And I have to make a note, listener, it has been confirmed, even mass mainstream media is confirmed it, I think just yesterday, that the big lie story that U.S. or Israeli forces hit, like on the first or second day, that Iranian girls' school, they did not. It's been confirmed that that was actually a missile from the IRGC that hit that school, right? Well, not U.S. or Israeli forces. Nope. The IRGC did it. Period. Okay, now back to this. Bases that Iran retaliates against are being strategically evacuated before the missiles land, denying Tehran the propaganda value of mass American casualties. We're nearly a week into this war, and only 6 Americans have been unalived, as compared to the 50 in the first week of Iraq. And God bless those 6 American soldiers. God bless their souls and God bless their beloveds, I'm saying. Now back to the reading. Dr. Steve says, the entire operation is designed not to just decapitate the regime, but to do it in a way that keeps the Iranian people and military dissident on our side. Because when the bombs only hit the men who've been oppressing you for 47 years, liberation starts to look less like an invasion and more like deliverance. Yep. And astonishingly, it's not just technopolarity at work here. It's also the emerging literal universe of astropolarity, right? National Review is now saying that what we've been tracking, they're now admitting that what we've been tracking for weeks, Trump was right about the Space Force, and the Iran war is proof. When Trump created Space Force back in 2019, critics called it a joke. Literally. Well, nobody's laughing now. In 20th century wars, the key was our power. In 21st century wars, the key is space power. Space Command was one of the literal first movers in Operation Epic Fury, degrading Iran's sensors, jamming its communications, and blinding its command structure from orbit before a single bomb dropped. And I want to interrupt here, listener, to say, yeah, the U.S. military has been proven to be the best in the world. They're using DEWs, directed energy weapons, and they're using technology and weaponry that nobody else has. So this is giving lie to like Iran was so comfortable previously thinking that their allies, like maybe Russia or China, would come to their aid in case of something like this. But Russia and China do not have this technology. Only the United States of America has it. So now I'm going back to this reading. Okay, Space Force Guardians at Shriver. They detected Iranian retaliatory missiles seconds before launch, cueing intercepts across the Gulf. Electronic warfare units cleared the sky so B-2 bombers could strike undetected. GPS satellite comms and real-time orbital surveillance undergird every single precision strike in this campaign, all done from over 20,000 miles high in the stratosphere. So this is the astropolar shift that we've been talking a lot about on this channel. The war isn't just being won in the air through technopolarity, right? It's being won in orbit and then delivered through the air. So technopolarity and astropolarity are combining to give the United States a power never yet seen in military combat. And we ain't seen nothing yet. At least that's as far, he laughs. That's what Pete Hegseth is telling us. And for those of you who don't know, who may not be American, Pete Hegseth is the U.S. Secretary of War. Okay, the best is yet to come, as it were. Now, this technopolar, astropolar dominance does appear to be calming the nerves of voters. We've talked about this poll earlier this week from CBS. It dropped midweek. I mean, look at this. They asked respondents, and good on CBS. Maybe this is Barry Weiss, but good on CBS for asking this very question. They asked voters if they supported this war based on how long it's estimated to last. Very, very insightful. So do you approve or disapprove of military action against Iran if the conflict was to last for days or weeks, months or years? And look at the level of support. Again, this is from CBS for a campaign that lasts days or weeks. 76%. It's a super majority. It's an 80-20 issue. Literally, round it off. It's an 80-20 issue, right? We now know that people were worried about, rightly so. We now know what people were worried about, rightly so. They do not want this conflict to drag on and on year after year like it did in Iraq or Afghanistan, Libya or Syria. And as we're seeing with the technological and astrological advances, those are precisely the kinds of concerns that are increasingly being assuaged. And in terms of Trump's own poll numbers, especially among the base, I mean, he laughs. Look at this poll. This is Fox News polling, which tends to lean left. I mean, like always. I mean, look at this. Trump has got a 98% approval rating among self-identified MAGA loyalists. 2% disapprove. Now, yes, they are a very noisy 2% for sure. But that's it. That's what the polling is consistently showing. CNN admitted the same thing. Harry Anton admitted the same thing. The MAGA faithful love Trump. Republicans love Trump. They support him. And so the combination of the American people, of the MAGA faithful, of the American people and the MAGA faithful are overwhelmingly behind Trump in this campaign, as they should be. What we have to understand is that we are witnessing something truly epic in the making. What Trump is doing in Iran is all about MAGA. It's all about making America great again, precisely because it's all about positioning MAGA. It's precisely all about positioning MAGA at the very center of this rising civilizationalist world order that we're seeing. We've seen the role of politics in this military campaign. We've seen the role of astropolitics. Now I want to show you the role of geopolitics in all this, because there is an increasing recognition that what's happening here with Iran is not really ultimately about Iran. There's a growing consensus that what's really happening here is actually not ultimately about Iran at all. It's not about Iran's proxies or even its acquiring a nuclear bomb. I mean, to be clear, those are absolutely key issues in this war that need to be neutralized, no question. And certainly that's what Trump has to publicly focus on. There are some things that are not allowed to be said in geopolitical parliament. But a growing number of analysts are saying that part out loud, that this war is not ultimately about Iran. There is a growing consensus that this war is ultimately about China. And what I want to do is to put all these pieces together, the technopolitical, the astropolitical, and now the geopolitical pieces together, and show you Trump's real vision for MAGA. He is permanently positioning MAGA to literally be at the very center of the world for generations to come. It's astonishing. Wait until you see this. And I want to interrupt, listener, to say, as I've said so often, and this is proven now, especially with this reading that I'm given, as it will play out, more people will come into alignment and see the truth of this. MAGA is really, MAG is short for magnetism, which is Mother Divine, the Creator. A is short for Alpha, which is Divine Father, the Divine Consciousness. Together, Mother, Father, God. All that's happening in this great scouring of evil, this great battle across this earth realm, and it has been in the cosmos and in the heavenlies, of light against dark. It has been divinely decreed, and it has been prophesied by many, many civilizations for thousands of years. They call this the end times. It's not the end for the real humanity. It's the end for the evil dark forces, the children of Cain, the seed of the serpent, the brotherhood of the serpent, the beings that came out of the ancient worlds of Sumer and Babylon and infiltrated ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, and spread out all over this earth realm. Infiltrated just about everything, and have been the satanic, they call themselves elite controllers, for thousands of years. This is the battle that we're in. All right. So anyway, back to this reading. He says, for a decade, Beijing has been building a quiet shadow empire covering the entire globe. The Belt and Road Initiative is a Chinese web that runs through 150 plus countries, locking in ports, railways, and digital infrastructure from Pakistan to Sri Lanka, from Kenya to Greece, a hard security core with Russia and Iran that trades energy, arms, and diplomatic cover. Authoritarian clients like Venezuela and Panama, adjacent port deals that gave it leverage even in our own geographical backyard, in our own hemisphere. They brokered multilateral shells like the SCO and BRICS, plus that dress all of this up as multipolarity. And over all of it, a digital and space layer of Huawei networks and Beiyou satellites that hardwire Chinese standards into other militaries and economies, most particularly Iran. In other words, China hasn't just risen inside of a multipolar world, a world where these are multiple political and economic and military powers. China hasn't just risen inside a multipolar world, it spent years wiring one together around itself. From a civilizational vantage point, it's the reawakening of the ancient Chinese cosmovision known as Tianxia, which literally means all under heaven. And in classical Chinese thought, it's referred to as the entire ordered cosmic realm with China as its center. It imagined the world as concentric circles radiating outward, from the imperial court at the center through tributary states to outer barbarians, so that China was quite literally the middle of the civilized world. However, this is the missing dimension of so much that passes as multipolar analysis today. For way too many analysts, they focus solely on multipolarity, working only in one singular direction. China, Russia, and India must increase, all the while the United States must decrease. Oh, I forgot to mention, listeners, in case anyone didn't know what SCO was when I just mentioned it a few seconds ago. SCO is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Okay, so back to the reading. China, Russia, India must increase, all the while, the United States must decrease. That's the predominant analysis of a rising multipolar world. A world of BRICS, and listener, just to remind you, BRICS originally, even though many other countries signed on to it, BRICS originally was Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Those countries that were wanting to knock down the American dollar and convince the rest of the world not to use it. So a world of BRICS, a world of the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and most especially a world where China increasingly dominates the political, economic, and militaristic global landscape. But there's one major flaw in this analysis: Donald J. Trump. As it turns out, Trump doesn't envision this China-dominated multipolar world at all. He doesn't see multipolarity moving in a single direction. What if, as it turns out, multipolarity is dynamic? What if the United States can form its own thoroughly multipolar alliance networks and multilateral treaties around the globe that actually awaken a new American era of dominance and growth within a multipolar context? What if America can recalibrate the world order with America at its center? What if the real mandate under heaven isn't centered on China? It's actually centered on MAGA. That is precisely what MAGA is ultimately all about. MAGA isn't just about closing one's borders and bringing manufacturing back home and restoring the political clout of the working class and destroying wokeness and revitalizing American culture. All of that is yes and amen, but that's just where it begins. Excuse me, listeners, I have to take a sip of my beverage for a second. I am burning a lot of fabulous incense all around me, but it's kind of choking me a little bit. I am kind of burning a little too much. Was a little too enthusiastic before. Okay, so that's just where it all begins. As we are about to find out, President Trump sees making America great involving making America the permanent center of the world in ways we never even imagined possible. That is MAGA. And that is what this war in Iran is ultimately all about. What President Trump is doing is he's essentially inverting that Chinese multipolar architecture. He's peeling away and neutralizing that Beijing-anchored global network and replacing it with an American-anchored global network. The strikes on Tehran are not just about Iran. They're about severing China's key to holding much of the world's energy supply hostage. The capture of Maduro was not just about Venezuela. It ripped out a key Chinese foothold in the Americas, including the sea lanes linked to the Panama Canal, where Beijing created a shield of worldwide clients and choke points protecting its rise. Trump is turning those very same regions into launch pads for a counter multipolarity with America, not China, at its center. If you remember, it all started here. Trump, in his very first week as president, right? He pounced on Panama, of all places. The very first order of business for Trump internationally was his move to retake effective control over the Panama Canal corridor from Chinese-linked operators and projects. That was the first visible break in Beijing's quiet encirclement strategy in the Western Hemisphere, signaling that the canal and the ports and logistics around it would no longer be treated as a neutral commercial zone, but as a core piece of American civilizational infrastructure. And little did we know at the time that that was a micro component to Trump's larger macro grand strategy. Once Washington started rolling back Chinese influence at that choke point, it created the template for a broader strategy. Unwind Beijing's footholds at critical nodes, then rebuild those spaces into U.S.-anchored security and economic networks. That's the pattern every step of the way as we go on here. And so that's where the arrest of Maduro came in back in January. By having Maduro arrested and removed, Trump shattered one of Beijing's most important political and economic footholds in the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela had functioned as basically a Chinese client, trading cut-rate oil and strategic access for BRI loans and diplomatic cover. In fact, roughly 3 to 5% of China's total crude oil imports were coming from Venezuela. That's done. That's gone. China's been completely cut off from Venezuela. And now it was just announced that Venezuela and the United States have officially reestablished diplomatic ties for the first time in years. The Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, was just in Caracas meeting with their acting president, and she publicly before her entire nation thanked President Donald Trump for, quote, his government's kind willingness to work together on an agenda that strengthens binational cooperation for the benefit of the peoples of the United States and of Venezuela. A Chinese vassal state is now fully aligned economically and politically with the United States. When I say that you changed the world back in November 2024, this is precisely what I mean. The China-Venezuela axis has been destroyed. Destroyed. And now a new Venezuela-American alliance has dawned. And as we speak, roughly a third to a bit over a third of Venezuela's total crude exports are now effectively flowing to or through U.S.-controlled channels. And now we're finding out as of yesterday, or listener, I guess 2 days ago, that a free and fully liberated Cuba is already in the works. Check this out. Clip of President Trump. He's welcoming Lionel Messi and the soccer players to the White House. And he asked them, how many of you are from Cuba? Well, guess what? You're going to be able to go back. And then he goes, don't stay there for too long. We want you back here playing, but you're going to be able to go back. The deal's already in the works. Cuba is going to be free. Cuba wants to make a deal. Cuba is agreeing to Trump's terms, as it were. Cuba is going to be free. I mean, absolutely incredible. And yes, listeners, as I was talking to several people that I know several days ago, I just had Cuba on the brain. I couldn't stop thinking about Cuba and getting so happy thinking, I mean, the Cuban people have just been, oh my goodness, so stymied and crushed for so long. And to think of them regaining their sovereignty, their freedom, oh, I mean, it's just makes one so happy. So let me go back to this reading. He says, and so next on the list is Greenland up north, right? The entire purpose of Greenland for Trump comes down to two words, military and minerals. Those are the two dynamics that are driving the United States to take over Greenland, military demands and mineral demands. So militarily, Greenland is essential for the Golden Dome missile defense shield. In that ballistic, hypersonic, and cruise missiles would be flying over the Arctic on their way to North America. So Greenland is indispensable for positioning sensors and anti-missile defenses. And in terms of minerals, Greenland holds some of the world's largest deposits of rare earth elements that power advanced weapon systems, smartphones, electric vehicles, batteries, AI data centers. And as we speak, many of you know this, China dominates the rare earth supply chain. Roughly 60 to 70% of mining and up to 90% of processing capacity belongs to China. So in a world where supply chains are weaponized right now, China has all the cards and Trump wants to change that. And Greenland is essential for that. And so that's why Trump secured the NATO framework that gives us what they call, quote, total military access, end quote. Embassy-like sovereignty over the entire island. It gives us all the mineral rights we want, and it bans Russia and China from setting up mineral activities anywhere on or near the island. We get the decisive veto vote on that, all without formal annexation. Denmark can continue to keep them as their welfare state, no problem. And I mentioned the Golden Dome. Did you hear the latest news? Forget that. See, this is the thing with Trump. You have to keep up with him. He moves so fast, right? Forget the Golden Dome. That's yesterday's news. That's peanuts. Trump has just announced his Shield of the Americas. Have you heard about that? A continent-wide extension of Trump's Golden Dome missile defense concept applied not just to the United States, homeland, or North America, but the entire Western Hemisphere. So we're still learning about it. The details have yet to fully come out. He just made the announcement, but in policy terms, it likely means a layered anti-missile and air defense network, ICBMs, hypersonics, cruise missiles, drones modeled on and scaling up from the US Golden Dome idea itself, inspired by Israel's Iron Dome. So again, this is technopolarity and astropolarity coming back to play here. And it would involve the full integration of the entire Western Hemisphere, United States, Canada, Latin America, bringing together radar interceptors, space-based sensors into a shared architecture to defend the Americas as a single security zone. So this is what I just described for you there. This is the American civilizational center. That's what you got to get. The American hemisphere that promises to politically and economically flourish like never before under an American guaranteed security. But as it turns out, what Trump is doing here is he's interlocking that Western security zone and re-centralizing it into a horizontal chain of overlapping multiple alliances around the globe, each regionally specific, each civilizationally integral, but all with the United States as the constant participant and guarantor, not China. That's the key. It's a system that scholars call networked multipolarity. You may want to write that down because a lot of people are out there right now saying, quote, goodbye, multipolar world. No. We're still in a multipolar world. All right? 20% of Ukraine has been annexed to Russia. You can only do that through a multipolar world. China still exercises enormous power and influence. That's multipolarity. India has 20% of the world's population and is growing, and it's tech savvy and so forth. That's multipolarity. Now, we're still living in a multipolar world, but we're increasingly living in a networked multipolarity, an allegiance of multiple poles, multiple power centers, with one highly connected node, as it were, at the center of the web. It's somewhat of an extension of Sam Huntington's concept of core states and satellite states, in a way. So he saw civilizational spheres as having like a core state, like Russia, in the orthosphere. And then you have all the satellite states around, Eastern Europe, the stands, and so forth. America, Georgia, and they all come under in ornate Russian security, economic and cultural influence. Well, that's exactly what we're seeing. But at a global level with the United States as its center, and then these satellite civilizations all interconnected in this networking multipolarity. China has been busy building its own world of network multipolarity for the last 2 decades. Now, as far as Trump is concerned, it's the United States' turn. And so the shield of the Americas will first and foremost interlink with NATO. In fact, it was NATO that helped broker the deal that gave the United States embassy-like sovereignty all over Greenland. NATO remains the Atlantic pillar of this architecture. The traditional U.S.-Europe Security Corps that now explicitly treats cyber and space, right? Technopolarity and astropolarity as operational domains, and is slowly being connected to missile defense and space tracking assets anchored in the U.S. Golden Dome. Well, originally Golden Dome, but now Shield of the Americas. So in a network sense, NATO is the transatlantic bridge node. It connects U.S. homeland defense to European forces that then plugs into operations in the Mediterranean, in the Black Sea, and the greater Middle East. And that's where the Abraham Accords come in, right? This is the great achievement of Trump's first administration. And it turns out to be the third geographic alliance zone in this U.S. brokered horizontal network. So you have your Western Hemisphere. You've got NATO, and now you've got the Abraham Accords. And what's absolutely key to the Abraham Accords, and this is what you've got to get this because there's so much BS out there right now, particularly in the right-wing media sphere. What is absolutely essential, and I didn't make up the rules, I'm being descriptive, not prescriptive, but what you've got to get is that the Abraham Accords normalize Israel's relationship with the Sunni Arab nation states, the Gulf states. It normalizes Israel's relationship with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, a number of other Gulf states, creating the political precondition for U.S.-aligned security and economic cooperation across the Eastern Mediterranean via Israel, all throughout the Gulf. This is why it is patently absurd. I'm not making the rules here, gang. It is patently absurd. It's geopolitically absurd to claim Trump is doing the bidding of Israel. It's patently absurd to call this a Zionist war. How on earth is Saudi Arabia fighting a Zionist war? How is Bahrain and Qatar doing the bidding of Israel? This is patent geopolitical nonsense. The Abraham Accords officially eliminate the geopolitical animosity between Israel and the Arab Gulf states. The charge that anyone is doing the bidding of Israel in this war is entirely based on a dichotomy that used to exist that no longer does. It's entirely based on a past animosity between Israel and its wider Arab neighbors. The Abraham Accords have officially nullified that animosity. You gotta get that. Regardless, I don't want to get too stuck in that. The purpose of the Abraham Accords is to create an Israeli-Arab alliance that combines Israeli muscle with Arab money for a secure and economically flourishing region. And Iran is the principal impediment to that security and economic flourishing. And this is key. This is key. It turns out it's not really Iran. Iran's just a proxy because it all comes down to this. Who is financing Iran? Who is empowering Iran? Who is Iran's chief financier? Who is Iran's chief investor? It's none other than China. China is Iran's single most important external economic backer, centered on a 25-year comprehensive strategic partnership in which Beijing has pledged roughly $400 billion of investment into Iran's oil, gas, petrochemical, and infrastructure sectors. In return, the deal gives China priority access to Iran's oil at steep discount, very, very cheap, which has been central to China's business model because they turn around and sell a lot of that on the global market. So they make a nice profit. One of the ways they create cheap goods is because they're fueled and discounted energy coming from Venezuela and coming from Iran. As sanctions cut Iran off from Western buyers, China has become Tehran's main oil customer, at one point buying more than 80% of Iran's seaborne crude exports and supplying a financial lifeline that keeps the regime afloat. And I also want to interrupt your listeners to say, it also really helped that the satanic pedo, Barry Hussein was his real name, not Barack Obama, the satanic pedo treasonous criminal of the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist cult, that he gave Iran almost $2 billion and $1.7 billion in gold that he stole from Fort Knox. And then also he gave pallets and pallets of cash. He flew them out in cargo planes to Iran right before he left office. So that really helped Iran to build all their nonsense. Yeah. Okay, so back to the reading. Basically, all the weapons that we are facing now, or what remains of them, I should say, their missiles, their drones, their anti-aircraft weaponry, all of their navy, it's all been financed in some way, shape, or form by China. And more geopolitical analysts have recognized that the key to this relationship with Iran is that Iran has effectively become China's proxy in the Gulf region. And that gives China tacit control over the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's energy supply passes through. And when, not if, when I'll say that again, when, not if, when Iran would get a nuclear weapon, that proxy relationship with China, that tacit control that China would have over the major energy choke point in the world would be permanent by every mainstream measure. The Hormuz is effectively the single most important energy choke point on the planet. And through its nuclearized Iranian proxy, it would forever be under the tacit control of China. Make no mistake. The Hormuz was the biggest prize. Excuse me, it was the crown jewel in this growing Chinese networked multipolarity. De facto control over the Strait of Hormuz and making Iran, in effect, their vassal state, was the key to achieving precisely that. And so there was no way we could allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. No way. By taking out Iran as the latest in this recalibration of the world around this U.S. brokered horizontal network, the shield of the Americas, NATO, the Abraham Accords, Trump is accomplishing two grand strategies in one fell swoop. He's awakening the peace and prosperity for the Middle East secured by the Abraham Accords, and he is radically weakening China by cutting it off from its most destabilizing clients, its cheapest sanctioned oil lifelines, and its ability to use the Gulf as a weapon against the West. Case in point, have you seen this? Take a look at this. He shows a Reuters headline. China urges refiners to suspend fuel exports amid Mideast war. Sources say, excuse me, listener, that incense is getting me again. China is ordering its big refiners to suspend exports of diesel and gasoline. Remember that cheap gas they get that they then turn around and resell? They ain't doing it no more. It's a classic tighten the belt move. It's a different kind of Belt and Road initiative that governments make when they fear their own supplies are at risk. It's a very clear signal that Beijing is worried about disrupting crude flows from both Iran and Venezuela, approximately, again, 20% of its oil, all at reduced prices. And so it feels compelled to hoard refined products at home instead of earning money by selling them abroad. In a system where China still imports roughly half its oil from the Middle East and is the biggest buyer of ultra-cheap Iranian barrels, that kind of export freeze is a telltale sign that the war and the squeeze on Iran are already biting into China's energy security and economic comfort. So once again, in one fell swoop, by taking out the Iranian regime, Trump is eliminating the single greatest impediment to peace and prosperity in the Middle East, and thereby securing American influence for generations to come, and at the same time significantly weakening China. And here's how we bring it all together. A weakened China means what? It means a stronger India and a stronger Japan. And that brings us to the final two U.S. brokered alliances in this astonishing horizontal global network. The I2U2 and the Quad. So you may not have known these two, but they're very important. They're going to become incredibly important in the years to come. So the I2U2 alliance is an Israel-India alliance. Do you see how everything is interconnected from the Americas through Greenland to NATO, and then from NATO into Israel, from Israel all throughout the Middle East, and then from Israel to India and South Asia? So it's Israel, India, and it's the UAE and the US. So that's why you've got two I's and two U's. I2U2. Israel, India, UAE, and US. India, Israel, and UAE, and the US. And it's an alliance that combines Indian power and technology with Israeli innovation, Emirates capital, and American security guarantees. So it links the Atlantic system, the shield of the Americas, to the Indian Ocean via Israel, the Gulf, and India. And then that links to the Quad. And you better make sure you know this alliance here. The Quad is made up of the United States, India, so there's our launch pad, Australia, and Japan. The Quad is widely described as the core of U.S. strategy in a multipolar Indo-Pacific, as a platform coordinating security, tech, and maritime posture among these four major democracies. And I have to interrupt a listener to say, sorry, Dr. Steve, the USA is a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Okay, back to the reading. And so this is one of the major reasons why more and more analysts believe that perhaps the biggest winner in the Iran war is none other than Tokyo. China's biggest competitor for Southeast Asia dominance is Japan. Japan has its own Belt and Road Initiative, the Partnership for Quality Investment and Infrastructure, which is every bit as aggressive as Beijing's. And dare I say, since I've been in Japan multiple times and I've talked to many people, it has far better quality as well. They say if you're driving on a road, say in one of the countries in Africa, that's been built up either by the Partnership for Quality Investment Infrastructure of Japan or by the Belt and Road Initiative of China, while you're driving along and it's smooth and it's nice, and all of a sudden you hit this bumpy road. The joke is that, you just crossed over into China's Belt and Road Initiative built project. Bottom line, a weaker Beijing means a stronger Tokyo. And so, is it any wonder why we are now seeing Japan re-militarize? President Trump is all for this. He's consistently pressured Japan to increase its military spending, aiming to have them reach NATO level together, aiming to have them reach NATO level targets of 5% of their GDP and take a more active independent role in regional security to reinforce U.S. forces. So he's advocated for Japan to expand its defense capabilities to counter regional threats. And their new Prime Minister, Sonae Takaichi, hardcore conservative nationalist populist, closed the borders. She's the Trump of the East. She's all in, as is the vast majority of the Japanese population. It's very, very popular to get what is it? Article 9 in their constitution. That makes them officially a pacifist nation. And so that's Trump's vision for an American civilizationalist order. It starts with the Shield of the Americas, the U.S., Canada, and key Latin Caribbean partners, forming a hemispheric ring around our own backyard. And from there, that ring snaps into Greenland and NATO, stretching American power across the Atlantic into Europe. And then you layer that onto the Abraham Accords and the I2U2, Israel, the Gulf, and India, linking the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean, and a single Indo-Abrahamic arc. And at the far end, the Quad US, India, Japan, and Australia, closing the circuit, giving you a single horizontal network of alliances that runs from the Caribbean through Europe, the Gulf, all the way to Tokyo, with America as the constant node holding it together. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what is really going on here. That's what this is all about. The convergence of technopolitics, astropolitics, and geopolitics that reawakens American civilization in literally its highest cosmic expression. That's why my new book that I'm writing is called The Civicosm, Civilizational Cosmocracy. MAGA is ultimately a literal galactic version of American greatness and limitless potential. The Tianxian is being eclipsed by the American cosmocracy that is growing as we speak. As it turns out, this is not China's century, as so many analysts predicted with their networked multipolarity. No, this is America's century. This is a century where the United States will tacitly control nearly 60% of global oil production and an even larger share of globally traded oil and LNG. The petrodollar stays. As of this week, the petrodollar stays. The petrodollar ain't going away, and therefore American power and might isn't going away. This is a century where America will sit at the center of over half the world's energy production, a nation wired together. An entire arc of civilizational blocks from the Caribbean to the Gulf to the Indo-Pacific, projecting peace through strength from orbit down to Earth. It is the refusal to cede the heavens to tyrants. The insistence that American ingenuity, faith, and courage will define the next age of history. Not Beijing's techno-authoritarianism or Tehran's death cult. In that sense, MAGA is not a backward glance, but a forward charge. An American civilization that dares to think in civilizational and cosmic terms. But most importantly, with President Trump at the helm, this America has the will to act on it. And there's another note to this, listener, to people that are saying, oh, I thought President Trump said no more wars. It's not no more wars. It's no more endless wars. No more feudal wars. No more stupid wars. No more globalist wars. No more of that. The policy of Trump is no greater friend, no greater enemy. We stay at home. We create our alliances. But once any of those alliances are threatened, we will come in and we will knock out the threat. So it's decapitate and then deregulate. We're going to get rid of your leadership, and then you guys figure out what you're going to replace them with. But if we're not happy with who you replace them with, we're going to knock them out as well. Period. End of story. So thank you so much for listening. Woo! Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Leave your comments. Leave your emojis. What do you think about all this? Holy cow. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. I end all of my clips with a closing prayer, which is very, very short. It's in Sanskrit and Telugu. What I'm saying is God bless all beings in all worlds. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yes, peace, peace, peace. What we're all looking forward to. Yes. God bless you and yours. I'm sending much love and hugs to you and yours. I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye for now.